In this exercise, we're going to draw these little flower elements, and in doing so, I'm going to show you how to reflect across an axis that is neither horizontal nor vertical, and you'll see why that's so very useful inside of Illustrator. I've gone ahead and saved my progress as onegreenelement.ai, found inside the 06 Transform folder. And I'm going to zoom into my illustration, and I'm going to control-click or command-click on the eyeball in front of drawing so that I can better see what I'm doing. And I'll switch over to the blob brush tool. And we're going to draw each one of these flower elements, 5 in all. We've got this dark blue thing, this lighter blue thing, this sort of brownish orange flower element around the edge, the center of the flower in yellow, and this little sort of collar at the bottom. So 5 things that we need to draw. I'm going to start things off by drawing this blue thing right there. And I'm working with a pretty small brush. You don't have to get it exactly right. You do want to make sure you drag all the way over this guideline right there so that you have room to join the two paths together. That is, the path that I'm drawing right now with its reflected version, which is coming right up. All right, that looks pretty good to me. So now I'll go ahead and assign its proper attributes, which are a stroke of 1 point. That'll go ahead and automatically assign a black stroke, and then change the fill to this swatch right there, deep blue. All right, the next path would be this little guy, and it won't automatically join because, once again, we're using a different fill attribute. So it comes in as a separate object. Assign the stroke again. This gets a little tedious, but we have to do it. Assign a 1 point stroke once again, and then change the fill to not deep blue, but rather just plain old blue. All right, now let's go ahead and draw the flower like so. And again, don't get too worried about how good of a job you're doing. The main thing is you need to cross this diagonal guideline. That is the main thing we're looking for. And don't cross it too far, just cross it a little bit, as you see me doing right here. If your path is lumpy and weird looking, that doesn't matter one little bit. It'll actually end up producing a pretty nice result. Go over to stroke and change it to 1 point. Go over to the fill attribute right there and change it to brown. All right, and then what we need to do is paint the center of the flower like so. Cross over that diagonal guideline. Paint it as big as you want it to be. That looks pretty good to me. Change the stroke. This is a surprise. To 1 point. Again, black. And then let's change the fill attribute this time to yellow. Or at least what goes by the name yellow in these swatches. It's more of a golden color, but that's okay. All right, now we need to paint this little skirt at the bottom. So go ahead and paint it like so. And I'm not going to paint in that little green dealy right there. So I'm going to kind of come out farther into it in order to fill out that region. And that looks good to me. Again, I'm crossing the diagonal line, ever so important. And now let's go ahead and change the stroke, this time to 1 point. I knew you wouldn't see that one coming. And then we'll change the fill to brown. All right, and that's it. We are now done with the main elements of the flower. That is, we're done with the drawing. So you can control-click or command-click to, again, preview this beautiful thing that you've created. And let's go ahead and change the stacking order since it's a mess right now. I'm going to twirl open the drawing layer. And this guy right there, he represents the skirt, and you could go ahead and rename these if you want to. But I'm going to drag the skirt element all the way down below the other 4 portions of this flower right there. So we get this effect. And then I'll drag this lighter blue guy below the darker blue guy like so. And otherwise, everybody's in order. So it should be the yellow center up front. And then what would this brown be? These would be the petals, I guess. I'll click OK in order to accept that name. This would be the thing. And this would be the smaller thing, I guess. All right, so I'll go ahead and click OK to accept those. Now I want to select them and reflect them on the other side. Now, before you do, though, if there's any changes you want to make, I encourage you to make them now. For example, let's say thing. I'll go ahead and meatball it to make it active. Let's say you don't like the fact that thing, in my case, is touching the edge of the green element. Why, then I would switch over to the eraser tool, and I would drag like so into thing right there in order to scalp away from it just ever so slightly. And I get this effect right there. And that's not necessarily the smoothest result. If that bothers me, I could erase into it a little more. But you know what? I'll go ahead and press Control Z or Command Z on a Mac because that doesn't bother me. I like that weird little edge. So I'll go ahead and switch back to the selection tool, and I will shift click on each one of the remaining elements. So all 5 of these objects are selected. No, don't group them yet. We're not ready for that. What we want to do instead is we want to reflect them across an angled axis. So notice the angle of our reflection is this diagonal line right there. Well, inside your standard everyday vector drawing program, you've got a transform panel. That's very common. If I click on this flyout menu, you can either flip horizontally or vertically, nothing else. One of the fantastic abilities of the Reflect tool here inside of Illustrator is it can reflect across any angled axis. So go ahead and grab the Reflect tool. Move your cursor to the intersection of those 2 guidelines once again, and you can't see my cursor, but as soon as I Alt-click or Option-click at that location, you can see the target. I'm flipping across a vertical axis, so that moves the flower elements all the way over here. That's not what I want at all. I want an angled axis, and I'm going to try an angle of 45 degrees and press Tab and see if that works. That didn't work worth beans. So this is probably negative 45 degrees, actually, now that I think about it. So I'll enter a negative sign and press Tab, and that ends up working out delightfully well. So I've got an angle of negative 45 degrees. I click copy, and I have rotated the elements exactly the way I want them. All right, now to go ahead and merge them together, I'll switch back to my black arrow tool. I'll click on one of these center elements right there, and then I'll shift click on the other so that they're both selected. I'll press Shift M in order to switch to my shape builder tool, and I'll drag through the 2 of them like so in order to merge them together. And that creates this path. It appears behind a bunch of paths in the stack, so I'll just go ahead and drag it up to the top here inside the drawing layer. Next, I'll go ahead and access my black arrow tool by pressing the Control key or the Command key on a Mac, and I'll drag over these 2 petal elements to select them. And then after I release Control or Command, I will drag over the petal elements with the Shape Builder tool in order to combine them together. And that's my new petal right there. I'm wiping out my path name, so that didn't really provide me that much benefit, but that's okay. I'll go ahead and Control click or Command click on one of these blue things, and then Control Shift or Command Shift click on the other blue thing. Release both the keys and drag over the shapes to combine them. And finally, I'll Control or Command click on this path, Control Shift or Command Shift click on this one, then drag over both of them to combine them as well. So the only things that we didn't have to join, you may notice, are these smaller blue things right there. But like usual, we have some garbage. This is a piece of garbage. They're pretty easy to recognize. And this is another one. I'll shift click on this meatball in order to select it. They appear right there at the bottom of this path. Your results may vary. I'm going to press the backspace key or the delete key on a Mac in order to get rid of them. And then I will press the V key. In order to switch back to the black arrow tool, I will marquee all of these objects like so in order to select them. And I will press Control G or Command G on a Mac in order to group them together, and I will name this group Flower. And we have successfully completed the flower elements. In the next exercise, we will finish off the other elements in this upper right quadrant, and then we will duplicate them in order to complete the rest of the pattern.